Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola law firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we have a special topic of importance to everyone out there, the public, and especially to lawyers. It's tips on negotiation, especially for lawyers. And lawyers can earn CLE credit by listening to the program and recording the program number at the end, so be sure to pay attention for that. And our special guest is Cindy Watson. She's the author of a book, The Art of Feminine Negotiation, and you'll find out more about her book and how you can find out some free information on her website. Cindy, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Okay, thanks, Kenneth. It's great to be here.
First of all, why is negotiation so important to both lawyers and non-lawyers and everyone out there?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I think people underestimate. For me, my big mission is that all of life is a negotiation, frankly, whether it's negotiating with your kids, with your intimate partner, if you're a boss with your employees. For lawyers in particularly, we're engaged in formal negotiation almost every day in some aspect. But I think people forget that all of your life and your relationships are a negotiation. And it's one of the skills that we're not taught, even though it may be the single most important skill set you ever learn. And to the extent that we are taught it all, and lawyers in particular, I think, have this problem, we're taught that negotiation is all about the bark and the bite and that toughness carries the day. And it's simply not true.
Yeah, sometimes I call it the Rambo negotiator. Or the take no prisoners negotiator.
Absolutely.
But you're going to offer a better side and maybe easier for many lawyers and non-lawyers to follow. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I hope so. I realized that after I've been an attorney for 30 years as well, and I confess I fell into that trap where, all of the positive reinforcement that I got was when I was, as you say, take no prisoners, leave nothing on the table, that sort of chest beating kind of approach to negotiation. And there's a real cost to that approach, I find, Ken, both and personally. And I think that's why so many people end up leaving the practice of law in droves, and women in particular. I think it's a style that's just not natural. And there's this need, this feeling that we have to somehow overcompensate. So I started coming up with and developing a program. And I call it the art of feminine negotiation, even though I hate that sort of masculine and feminine divide. I think the language is just starting to catch up and will. But at the moment, it's because I believe the hallmarks of a really great negotiator are those, and this applies for the lawyers who are listening, but also for the general public. It's being able to bring that rapport building, empathy, flexibility, intuition, that trustworthiness. And frankly, lawyers who bring the full range of those skill sets to negotiations are going to get better results, higher satisfaction rates, longer lasting results, and relationships. And for the public as well, whether they're engaged in formal negotiations or negotiating, as I call it, negotiate your life, when you bring that skill set to the table. Assertiveness is also a skill, but that's only 1 out of 6 of the key markers, the hallmarks that mark a great negotiator. And ironically, of those, and I'll give a little mnemonic to maybe help your listeners here, are fit. And just think you are fit to be a great negotiator without the bite. And that's your assertiveness, rapport building, empathy, flexibility, intuition, and trustworthiness. It's going to lead to more creative thinking and results, and it doesn't take that personal toll where it starts to spill over into your personal life and relationships where everything becomes a debate or, looking for that take no prisoners approach, and it starts to affect how you deal with your intimate partner, with your kids, with your friends and family, and even, you go and negotiate, you get to a hotel room, they've got the wrong room, look out, it starts to seep into how we treat everybody in our life.
So part of it is being assertive but being nice about it.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think assertiveness, obviously you need to know to be able to hold your line. But being assertive, people tend to conflate aggressive with assertive. And some of the most effective negotiators I've ever seen, and I'm sure you've had that experience as well, can have a very quiet presence. And they bring that empathy and rapport building and those other skill sets to the table. And when people try and bully them or push them off their mark, they're not pushable. They don't move off their mark. They're able to be assertive, but they don't have to beat their chest to do it. They don't have to bring, an aggressive approach to it. Everything doesn't have to become a fight about it. And it's knowing when to use those. Assertiveness comes at the back end of the approach when you don't get moved off your mark, when you know what your best alternative is to a negotiated agreement. But you bring those other elements first. You start considering your why and the other party's why. Put yourself in their shoes. Get the hidden, those unstated negotiation. That's when you're really going to get deep results and come with a powerful secret weapon to negotiations when you're able to tap into that rather than just beating your chest trying to push your agenda without actually listening and learning and bringing all of those creative skill sets to bear for better, deeper results.
And depending on the other person, if you take an aggressive stance, they may respond by taking an aggressive stance.
Yeah, it almost always
as opposed to a cooperative and a problem-solving stance.
Absolutely. And you end up, I think, both people become tunnel vision. When you take that aggressive approach, you're almost necessarily inviting to get that approach back in spades. And then both parties become so tunnel vision, dug in on their own positions, that they miss the obvious solution that's sitting in the ether right between them if they would just allow themselves to open up and consider what the other party's why is, what's really driving them. Because even when we're negotiating about money, Kenneth, it's almost never really, there's always deeper whys to that. If you think like when a negotiation, let's take even a typical salary negotiation, frankly, it's almost rarely, never just about the money. It's about, it's different things for different people, but it's the lifestyle that brings, for example, for people. It's, for somebody, it may be that the trip of a lifetime or a bucket list worthy endeavor, or maybe it's about, getting more respect or proving something to somebody that you care about, that, you can approach this in a way and get what you want without, all of these different factors are at play, but people never talk about that. So everybody always assumes a negotiation is just about the stated matter, whether it's money or something else. There's virtually always deeper reasons that are undercurrents in every negotiation, and learning to tap into them, that's when you become a really powerful negotiator.
And what are some of the other 6 factors that are important, or the markers?
Yeah, and I think that's where that R fit comes in. So if you apply that, and there's some subsets of that, obviously, and some tips I'm happy to share as well. But so you've got assertiveness is just one. Rapport building is key. And by that, I mean, obviously, and this is why these are considered typically feminine traits, ironically. Women tend to believe they're not effective negotiators, and that couldn't be further from the truth, because if people start recognizing the real hallmarks of a great negotiator, these are traits that women use every day in spades. And frankly, that men can benefit from as well, because when men tap into these more, quote unquote, sort of the softer or more feminine traits, they become more powerful negotiators.
And so this is true for men, women, lawyers, or not?
It's absolutely true for women lawyers in particular. And I think if more women lawyers started sort of pushing against that conditioning that you have to be aggressive to be effective in this market, and ironically just tap into their own intuitive, more natural negotiating style, they're going to have greater peace, they're going to have greater fulfillment in their careers, and more importantly, or equally as importantly, they're going to have greater success in negotiating what they want and what they need in their professional careers by tapping into those skill sets that they already have in spades.
And perhaps less stress, because when you are that difficult, hardwired person, you get angry, and it takes a physical and emotional toll on you, and it can always elevate into some serious, medical issues, and you have stress before and after, if that's your mindset.
Absolutely, Kenneth. Absolutely. And that's why when I talk about the cost to that old school mindset about what constitutes negotiation, I'd like to get this mission out to the world to have everybody start turning their concept of what constitutes effective negotiations on its head, because we have unprecedented depression and anxiety and stress across all ages and cultures right now, but particularly for lawyers, our profession is riddled with off-the-chart levels of stress, and I think it's because we bring this negative, confrontational, adversarial approach, and it spills over into every aspect of our life, and it just has profound impacts on our relationships. And I don't think we're the last ones to recognize that it's having a profound adverse impact on our relationship with our intimate partners, kids, friends, family, and even our regular social dealings and business dealings outside of the practice of law.
And this is also why we have conflict around the world. And if you look back at all these police shootings in this country, maybe if those officers were trained in some of these skills that you're mentioning about rapport building and building trust, some of the dire situations could have been avoided.
I'm so glad you said that, because that is my hope and dream with this. I think it's life-changing for individuals who adopt this new practice and these techniques, and I think it has the potential to be world-changing, a huge, profound mindset shift if people start approaching all of their interactions as negotiations and approaching them with this mindset instead of a winner-take-all mindset.
And right, I'm just trying to say, if police officers, were trained and to follow these verbal techniques, or even in any dispute, not resort to physical confrontation and violence, it probably has better consequences.
Oh, could have profound positive impact, like just profound positive impact.
And after rapport building, what comes next?
After rapport building, we have empathy, that ability to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. And that's like, again, tapping into their deep whys. And part of this involves doing your homework where you can. And we don't always have the luxury of that. But when you do, definitely be, finding out as much as you can about the other party, what they need, why they need it, and really actively listen and put yourself in their shoes. What is the other party going to want? What's likely driving them and why?
And sometimes you can just ask them and ask thoughtful questions. This is probably a mediation skill that some judges use and lawyers who also act as mediators.
Absolutely. And an effective use of questions is a great skill on that. Knowing the difference between open questions and closed questions versus confirming questions and hypothetical questions, they can be great skills to draw out from the other side what's really driving, what's really laying underneath what seems to be the substantive issue in dispute.
And does this help you build trust at the same time?
Absolutely, and they're so connected because you've got that rapport building and empathy obviously tied together. Trustworthiness is the last of the R fit. Again, totally ties together. When you're building that rapport and that empathy, you increase the levels of trust, and studies consistently show that people, when you have a higher level of trust, you're going to get better results in your negotiations. You're going to face less conflict in those negotiations, whether personally or professionally.
And what comes after the empathy?
After empathy is flexibility. And again, part of that ties to, and I would say the flexibility piece applies both to the means and the matter of the negotiation. So both for your process of negotiation, as well as the substantive matters, having flexibility, as well as at your end result, and even flexibility can be in style. Like, we all have a natural negotiating style, but we also need to be able to sort of switch our styles as suits the circumstances. Obviously, the way that you conduct yourself when you're dealing with a young child in an interaction, for example, is perhaps going to be a different negotiating style than you would bring in the bedroom or in a corporate office or in the boardroom. All of the different circumstances will call for, or who you're negotiating with for that matter. You need the flexibility. If you've got somebody on the other side who's a big bully, then you're going to have to adjust your style accordingly to a certain extent to get those results. So
and on flexibility, this is also where you are finding out what's most important to them and what they might be willing to give a little on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Find out where the creative solutions lie. Being flexible to go as you hear something that maybe you didn't expect, or you get a sudden intuitive hit, which will take us into the next point. But when you start recognizing, oh, there's something else that's really driving this, or actually this is the more important element, and I assumed it would be this, having the flexibility to flow with that and then find where that river takes you so you can then start brainstorming for some more creative solutions that are maybe outside of what both of you
Okay,
came to
we're going to come back
negotiations.
in a moment and find out more about the intuition. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. Lawyers can earn CLE, and we're also over the internet at nccradio.org. We'll be back in a moment.
This program is brought to you by Nassau Community College, which offers a paralegal studies program. Students can major in paralegal studies while earning their associate's degree, or earn a paralegal certificate if they already have a college degree. These programs can even help you start a second career as a paralegal. It's a program for anyone who wants to work in a law office assisting lawyers, the government, or a position in an insurance company. More information about full-time, part-time, days, evenings, weekends, or online courses is available by calling 516-572-7774 or by email at paralegal@ncc.edu.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. Attorneys can earn CLE by listening to this program through the Nassau Academy of Law. There may be an administrative fee involved. You can contact them at 516-747-4070 for further information. That's 516-747-4070. And just listen for the code at the end of the program. Our guest is Cindy Watson. She's a lawyer and the author of a book on negotiation called The Art of Feminine Negotiation, but she has important tips for everyone out there, including lawyers. Cindy, you've been telling us about your great mnemonic, R-A-R-E, FIT, and we're up to the I for intuition. So tell us about that.
Yeah, and intuition, just as you would expect. We only use such a small percentage of our brains, and they, talk about First Nations people having been able to, intuit to know when their, people from their community were miles away and where they were coming. So learning to tap back into that intuition in your negotiations, again, whether personally or professionally. If you're getting an intuitive hit that you're on the wrong track, or that the other person isn't being straight with you, or there's some hidden agenda, or whatever, trust those intuitions as you're bargaining. Don't come in with just a fixated agenda of what you think you need to achieve. You need to be open, and this ties to that flexibility as well. Be open to trust your intuition and move with it as you need to, and you're going to get those better results and those deeper, long-lasting connections in your negotiations. And this is something, they call it women's intuition for a reason. When I'm teaching, at women's retreats that I do, or in my programming for the art of feminine negotiation for both men or women, this is that one area where it's getting people to realize where they already use these skills in so many ways in their everyday life that they're not thinking of as negotiations, and starting to apply those to tip that concept of what constitutes a good negotiator on its head.
And sometimes you're investigating or digging a little further based on your intuition, and if you're barking in the wrong field, then you'll try a different strategy.
Absolutely, and it gets back what you were saying, Kenneth, about questions, which is so important. Trust your intuition, that if you feel like you're not getting traction or you're hitting an impasse, then use your intuition to start asking questions, to dig, to find a path back in, to get things on track.
And you generally want to use it with soft questions and gentle questions, unless you have to structure it a little harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I say that flexibility comes in as well. Definitely try the softer approach first in negotiations. Get as much as you can with that, and only resort to that more assertive stances, after you've exhausted the other approaches and got the most that you can out of it. And if you're still not getting traction, then you need to bring a little assertiveness to the table, bring that up at the rear end.
And what else would you like to say about trustworthiness?
Well, for trustworthiness, I mean, I think it speaks for itself. Again, that when people trust you, you're more likely to get better results because people are going to let their guard down. People are going to be, both in terms of process and in terms of results, ironically. So once you start building that trust and they feel that trust in the negotiations, they're going to start to open up a little more, perhaps, about what those real drivers are, what they need, what they're prepared to give up on, what concessions. You'll start to be able to get a better sense from them about where the concessions lie, because as soon as they let their guard down, then they're going to start giving up more of that. And so long as you're staying in your empathetic mode as well and trusting your intuition while you're building that trust, all of these factors start playing together so that you can start seeing the direction that you need to go and where you can get more. And ironically, people are worried that if you sort of play nice or approach this, that you're going to get less. The opposite has been true in my experience. The more you start applying these, you're actually going to see better results at the end of the day across the board, both in your immediate concrete, what you take out of that negotiation, as well as having a result where people feel that there was some mutual benefit, and then they're going to trust you for those future relationships as well. And those deals just tend to last longer. Most of the studies support that across the board.
And are there any other suggestions you want to direct at women for using intuition and following some of the suggestions you've made?
Yeah, well, thanks for that, because I do think it's a real issue that women have to overcome this myth that they're not good in negotiators. And I think that comes from the fact that most people assume negotiation is all about that toughness carries the day, and this is an area where women feel they're not as strong. And I would say a couple of things to that. One, it's simply not true that, as I say, that assertiveness is the most important factor. They already carry these in spades. But also I ask them if they're concerned about the assertiveness thing, I ask them to invoke what I call the mama bear. And it's a very simple tip, because if women are advocating for themselves, that's when they're less likely to bring that assertiveness to the table. But when a woman is advocating for someone she cares about, a child, for example, look out, because that mama bear comes forward and they are fierce advocators. So the little tip that I give to women is, we all have that little girl inside us still, with our little girl hurts and insecurities and fears. And I ask them to just tap into that. If you're at a stage where you feel a little reluctant to bring that assertiveness to the table, then invoke the mama bear for the little bear cub in you. And it can be such a subtle shift, but a mindset shift that actually is a game changer for women in terms of being able to bring that assertiveness to the table when they need it as well.
And we only have a few minutes left in the program. Just tell us for a moment about your book and about what information is available for free on your website.
Yeah, I'd actually encourage people, please, by all means, go poke around on my website. It's called womenonpurpose.ca, and note that's CA. So womenonpurpose.ca. I have a weekly blog on the art of negotiation, so there'll be useful tips. They can go back through the full record. All of those resources are free. I have some free downloadable ebooks as well. One is for women specifically, about women on purpose. The other is Successful Secrets to Highly Effective Negotiation. These are sort of downloadable free ebooks and tips that they can have as well. I have programs that I offer that they can learn about as well, and certainly to get access as well to the book, The Art of Feminine Negotiation, How to Get What You Want from the Boardroom to the Bedroom.
And you've told us in the beginning of the show, the Rambro approach is wrong. Are there any other things that are not good ideas?
Yeah, I think going in with preconceived notions about how the negotiation is going to turn out, which is ignoring that flexibility approach, is one thing. And also just not being prepared for your negotiations. A big part of negotiations is doing your preparation. And for that, the one last tip that I would offer people as well is apply what I call the 5 W's. So really dig into the why we've talked about, but also your when. Like, choose your timing. Going in for a salary increase the day after the budget is being set is not going to help you, for example, but also when your state, like consider your state and the other person's emotional state in deciding when is an appropriate time. If they're in a super agitated state because something volatile has just happened, pick your timing and also decide on the urgency, how long the negotiation is. But also your where. People get so focused on that territorial approach about your place or my place posturing that they don't actually think about the pros and cons. Setting is important in books, and it's important in life, and it's important in negotiations as well. So consider the when, the where, the who, the what and the why in negotiations as well. It will elevate your negotiations to a whole other level. And again, I have a whole series of blogs on that on my website on womenonpurpose.ca. I've done a whole series of 5 blogs about the 5 W's that people find to be game-changing.
And in just a moment, 1 minute, is it good to have a bottom line or just have a range of acceptable outcomes?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I do definitely recommend that people come in with a bottom line. 2 things I would say. One is have a best alternative to a negotiated agreement, because sometimes people get so caught up in the moment of negotiating, they end up bargaining to a point where they had better alternatives on the table than coming to that negotiated agreement at that time with that person in that circumstance. So definitely always be mindful of what your best alternatives are to this particular negotiated agreement, and know that going in so that you keep perspective, and also know the point below which, either your resistant point or your bottom line, depending on whether it's about money or issues. But having said that, be open to be flexible. If it turns out that what you thought was the most important issue, you may countless times I've seen where you're able to come to a better resolution that was outside the box than what either party thought was going to be the bottom line. And
it's good to make a counter offer, somewhere in the range in between, if it's within your range of acceptable outcomes.
Absolutely, and that's a great point as well as in concessions. A skilled negotiator, and again, this applies for your entire listening audience, whether in their personal or professional life, plan your concessions. Have concessions already in mind that you're going to be able to make. Be open to it, and there's a whole art around that I deal with in the book as well, The Art of Feminine Negotiation. But definitely have those concessions in mind. Be mindful of them while you're negotiating in terms of the timing, what you give, when if you need to give it, but be willing and open to.
And how can you try to learn about the other person's range of possible outcomes and what they might be able to concede?
Yeah, and I think part of that is I always call it the iceberg, that typically like the, you only see 25% of the tip, if that, of an iceberg, and 75 to 90% of it is underwater. People are like that as well. What they tell you their needs are or not. So do your homework in advance. If it's in a personal context, then be thinking about what you know about the person. We know more than we think we do about the people in our lives, both personally and professionally. But don't be afraid to ask around. Or if you're coming into a big, high-profile negotiation, try and meet with the person in advance of that negotiation. Outside of the negotiation, go for a drink or go meet somewhere socially, have an opportunity to learn about them. So then you find out a little bit about their family and what drives them. And as you've said as well, ask. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, both leading up to the negotiation.
And then see what you can concede, how far you can go. I wish we had more time, but I'd like to thank author and attorney Cindy Watson. Attorneys, the code for credit is NS1998. That's N as in new, S as in seal, 1998. If you missed any part of this program, you can find the podcast at nccradio.org. Please join us at this same time next week for another program on Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College.